I saved my grandma's cat. It cost my family $37 million. Here's why. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to cut ties with my own family. But sometimes life pushes you into a corner where you've got no choice but to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you the most. My grandmother died 3 weeks before this all went down. Nana Rose, 87 years old, lived in the same house in New Jersey for 62 years, raised 4 kids in that place, survived 2 husbands, and kept a garden that could make Martha Stewart weep with envy. She was the glue that held our family together. And the second she was gone, that glue dissolved faster than sugar in hot coffee. The funeral was awkward. My dad and his brother barely spoke. My mom kept making passive-aggressive comments about who got what piece of jewelry. My older brother Kevin spent the whole reception on his phone, probably checking eBay prices for antiques. I should have seen it coming. 2 weeks after we buried Nana, Dad called a family meeting. We were going to clean out her house and divide up the estate. Now, Nana didn't have much in terms of liquid assets. No secret fortune hidden under the mattress. But she had a house full of stuff accumulated over 6 decades. Crystal bowls from her wedding. Silver candlesticks from the 70s. Furniture that survived 3 generations of kids jumping on it. The kind of things that don't mean much to strangers, but carry the weight of memory for family. I drove out there on a Saturday morning in early March. The weather was that particular kind of miserable that New Jersey specializes in. Not quite winter, not quite spring. Just gray and damp and depressing. The kind of day where the sky looks like dirty dishwater and the wind cuts through your jacket like it's got a personal vendetta. When I pulled up to Nana's house, there were already 3 cars in the driveway. Dad's pickup truck, Kevin's Lexus, which he absolutely could not afford on his sales job salary, but leased anyway because he needed everyone to think he was doing better than he actually was. And Mom's Honda CR-V with the faded bumper sticker that said, "Proud parent and honor student," from when Kevin graduated high school 15 years ago. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in. The place looked like a bomb had gone off in an estate sale. IKEA boxes were stacked everywhere. Those flat brown cardboard ones that always fall apart when you need them most. Mom was in the dining room, carefully wrapping crystal glasses in newspaper and placing them in boxes labeled with her neat, precise handwriting. Dad and Kevin were in the living room, going through Nana's china cabinet like vultures picking at a carcass. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just taking it all in. This was the house where I'd spent every Christmas of my childhood, where Nana taught me to make her famous apple pie, where I'd hide under the dining room table during family arguments and listen to the adults pretend everything was fine. Now it looked like a warehouse, impersonal, cold, stripped of everything that made a home. I pulled out my phone and started recording video, not for social media or anything. I just wanted to capture what the place looked like, preserve some memory of it before it was gone forever. I walked slowly through the living room, panning across the walls where family photos used to hang. The bare rectangles of cleaner paint showed where frames had been removed. The bookshelf was half empty. Even the smell was different. Instead of Nana's lavender sachets and old books, the place smelled like cardboard and dust. That's when Dad noticed me. He was holding a silver serving tray, examining it for tarnish. When he saw me with my phone out, his face went from neutral to angry in about half a second. His voice came out sharp and loud, told me to stop messing around with my phone, asked if I came here to actually help or just document everyone else doing the work, said he didn't drive 2 hours to watch me play Steven Spielberg while he and Kevin did all the heavy lifting. I put the phone away, felt my face getting hot. I was 19 years old, and my dad could still make me feel like a scolded child with just his tone of voice. I started helping, carried boxes to the truck, wrapped dishes in bubble wrap, tried to be useful. But the whole time, there was this tension in the air, this unspoken competition over who was going to get what. Kevin kept casually mentioning how much certain items might be worth. Mom had a running list on her phone of things she wanted to keep. Dad was clearly annoyed that his brother hadn't shown up to help, which meant more work for him and more chances for Dad's side of the family to claim the good stuff. Nobody was talking about Nana. Nobody was sharing memories or crying or doing any of the things you're supposed to do when you're packing up a loved one's life. It was just a transaction, an inventory, a liquidation. That's when I heard the cat. Whiskey, that was his name. Nana's cat. She'd had him for about 12 years. He was a scrawny orange tabby with one ear that flopped over and a meow that sounded like a rusty hinge. Nana loved that cat more than she loved most people. Fed him fancy wet food. Let him sleep on her bed. Talked to him like he was a person. I'd been driving out here every other day since the funeral. After work, fighting traffic on the Grand Central, just to fill his bowl and clean his litter box. Because I knew nobody else would. Dad said we'd deal with the cat later. Kevin never even asked about him. So I dealt with it. Spent money I didn't have on cat food and gas. But the last 2 days, I'd pulled double shifts at Best Buy and couldn't make it out. Felt guilty the whole time. Now Whiskey was wandering through the chaos, looking confused and distressed. Kept meowing this sad, questioning sound, more desperate than usual, rubbing against furniture that was being moved, trying to find familiar places in a house that was being systematically dismantled around him. I watched Kevin almost step on him. Watched my mom shoo him away when he tried to rub against her legs. Nobody was paying attention to the cat, like he was just another piece of furniture to be dealt with eventually. I went to look for his food bowl, his regular metal bowl, the one I'd been using all week when I came to feed him. But it was gone, probably already packed in some box headed for Goodwill. The cat was crying louder now, following me around, clearly starving. I'd missed 2 feedings. Felt like the worst person alive. I checked the kitchen. Nothing. Checked the utility room. Nothing. That's when Dad came into the kitchen carrying this filthy, odd-looking dish. He'd grabbed it from the windowsill in the sunroom, the sill where Nana used to keep her collection of small planters and random decorative objects. This thing was covered in dried soil, had water stains all over it. The color was this weird pale blue-gray, like the sky during a storm. But it was caked with grime, so you could barely see the actual surface. Dad held it away from his body, like it might contaminate him. Told me the thing was garbage. Said it didn't even sit flat on the table because the bottom had these crooked little feet that scratched furniture. Called it a piece of junk. Shoved it toward me and told me to use it for the cat food, since I was so concerned about the animal. I took it from him. Felt the weight of it. Surprisingly heavy for its size. Maybe 6 inches across. Shallow, like a small bowl or a large saucer. The surface was rough under my fingers where the dirt had dried. The glaze underneath felt smooth, but I couldn't really tell through all the crud. The bottom was definitely weird. Instead of flat base, it had these 3 tiny raised bumps. Like little feet, but crude and uneven. That's what made it wobble. Dad wasn't wrong about that part. I rinsed it quickly in the sink. Just a basic rinse. Didn't scrub it or anything. The water ran brown. Some of the surface dirt came off, but plenty remained, especially in the little cracks that covered the whole thing like a spider web. The color underneath was a bit clearer now. That strange blue-gray-green shade. Almost ethereal, but still looked like something you'd find at a garage sale for $2. I sat on the floor near the back door and poured some dry food into it. The bag of Whiskas was sitting on the counter, the cheap stuff in the purple bag. The kibble made a rattling sound as it filled the bowl. Whiskey came over immediately, started crunching away at the food like he hadn't eaten in days. Maybe he hadn't. Who knows when anyone last fed him? I watched him eat for a moment. This ancient cat, in his dead owner's house, eating garbage food out of a garbage dish while his former home was being torn apart around him. Something about the whole scene made my chest tight. That's when I heard Dad talking to Kevin in the other room. His voice carried easily through the mostly empty house. He was telling Kevin to call the vet in the morning. Said they needed to make an appointment to have the cat put down. Said it was old, probably sick, and they needed to finish dealing with the house without worrying about an animal. Just like that. Clinical. Matter of fact. Like he was talking about disposing of a broken appliance. Something in me snapped. I walked back into the living room. Dad and Kevin were standing near the fireplace, both of them holding boxes. Dad was in his work clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt with paint stains. Kevin was dressed like he'd just come from a business meeting, slacks and a button-down, even though we were literally cleaning out a house. I told Dad he couldn't do that. Told him Nana loved that cat, so he could find Whiskey a home, that I'd take him if nobody else would. Dad's expression didn't change. Just looked at me with that flat, annoyed stare he perfected over the years. Told me I was being dramatic. Said the cat was old and would probably die soon anyway. Asked if I really wanted to take on that responsibility when I could barely pay my own rent. That last part stung because it was true. I was 19, working part-time at Best Buy, living in a tiny apartment in Queens that cost way too much. I had maybe $200 in my bank account on a good week. Taking on a cat was legitimately a financial burden I couldn't afford, but I couldn't let it go. I pulled out my phone again. This time I wasn't filming the house. I opened a camera app and hit record, propped it against Nana's heavy brass clock on the mantel, facing the room. Lens aimed right at Dad. My hand was shaking. I didn't really have a plan. Some vague idea that if things got really ugly, I'd have evidence. Proof that I wasn't the crazy one. Dad noticed immediately. His whole demeanor changed. Got aggressive. Started moving toward me, asking what the hell I thought I was doing. Told me to put the camera away. Voice getting louder with each word. Kevin stepped back, creating distance. He always did that when things got heated. Never wanted to get involved. Just observed from a safer move, and then told people later that he'd tried to keep the peace. I kept my ground. Told Dad I was taking the cat. Said I'd figure out the money somehow, but I wasn't going to let him kill Nana's pet, just because it was inconvenient. That's when Dad completely lost it. His face went red. Started yelling about how ungrateful I was. How he and Mom had driven all this way to deal with this mess. How I showed up late. Didn't help. Spent the whole time on my phone. And now I was making demands like I had any right to an opinion. Whiskey, terrified by the shouting, had bolted into the cat carrier that was sitting near the door. Smart cat. Knew when to hide. The carrier door was still open, and he was pressed against the back of it, eyes wide. Dad kicked the carrier. Not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to send it sliding across the hardwood floor with a harsh scraping sound. Whiskey yowled inside. Then Dad grabbed that dirty dish. The one Whiskey had been eating from. There was still some kibble scattered in the bowl, along with dried saliva and crumbs. Dad picked it up with 2 fingers, holding it away from his body like it was contaminated. Told me that if I wanted to be a hero, I could take everything. Take the cat. Take the cat's mess. Take this worthless piece of junk too. Said he didn't want to see it or me in the house anymore. Told me to get out. Take my garbage and leave. He shoved the bowl toward me. Actually pushed it at my chest. Some of the kibble spilled onto the floor. The bowl nearly slipped from my hands, but I caught it. The glaze felt slick under my fingers. The whole thing was on video. Phone still recording from a mantel. You could see everything. Hear every word. See the anger in his expression. See him physically pushing things at me. I felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart, exactly. More like the last thread of connection to these people. The final strand of hope that maybe, somehow, we could be a real family. Mom appeared in the doorway, drawn by the noise. Looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe, or embarrassment. She didn't say anything. Just watched. Kevin was looking at his phone, pretending this wasn't happening. I moved fast. Grabbed my phone from the mantel, still recording, shoved it in my pocket, camera facing out, closed the carrier door with Whiskey inside, latched it, grabbed the carrier handle with one hand, scooped up the plastic bag of Whiskas with the other hand, hooking my fingers through the handles, tucked that filthy dish under my arm. The bowl still had food in it. Didn't want to waste it. Didn't want to leave any part of this behind. Everything balanced precariously. The carrier was heavy. Whiskey was shifting his weight inside, making it swing. The food bag kept slipping. The dish was trying to slide out from under my arm. Dad shouted after me. Told me not to bother coming back. Said if this was a choice I was making, I could live with it. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Needed all my concentration, just to keep everything from falling. Walked to the front door, used my elbow to turn the knob, shouldered it open. Cold March air hit my face. I stumbled down the front steps, nearly tripped on the bottom one, caught myself, kept moving. My Honda Civic was parked on the street, a 2008 model with a dent in the passenger door and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. The paint was faded. The interior smelled like old French fries, but it was paid off and it ran, which was more than I could say for a lot of things in my life. Had to set everything on the ground to get the back door open. The carrier first, gently, then the food bag, the dish last. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my keys. Got the door open, loaded everything into the back seat. The carrier went in first. Seat belt looped through the handle to keep it steady. Food bag wedged next to it. The dirty dish on the floor mat, wobbling on those uneven little feet. Whiskey me out from inside the carrier. That sad, confused sound that broke my heart. Slammed the back door. Got in the driver's seat. Hands still shaking. Had to try 3 times to get the key in the ignition. The engine turned over with its usual grinding sound. The one that made me worry every time that this might be the day it finally died. Looked back at Nana's house one last time. The lights were on inside. Could see shadows moving past the windows. My family, dividing up the remains of a life. Reducing memories to dollar signs and box labels. Dad was standing in the doorway now, arms crossed, watching me leave, making sure I actually went. I threw the car into drive and hit the gas harder than I needed to. Tires squealed slightly on the pavement. Dramatic exit. I didn't plan, but somehow fit the moment. The house disappeared in my rearview mirror. It was getting dark. The New Jersey sky had gone from gray to deep purple. Street lights were coming on. My phone was in my pocket, still recording probably. Battery would die soon. But I had what I needed. Dad's face, his words, the physical act of him shoving that dish at me. Proof that I didn't steal anything. Proof that I was given these things, however angrily. Some instinct told me I'd need that proof. Some sense that this wasn't over. Traffic on the highway would be heavy, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get back to my tiny apartment in Queens. Back to my own space where nobody yelled at me or made me feel worthless. Whiskey me out from the back seat. A long, mournful sound. I reached back and stuck my fingers through the carrier door. He pressed his face against my hand. Warm and alive and completely dependent on me now. Told him it would be okay. Didn't know if I believed it. Didn't know how I was going to afford cat food and litter on top of everything else. Didn't know what I'd do if my landlord found out I had a pet in a no-pet apartment. But I knew I'd made the right choice. Even if it cost me everything. Even if my family never spoke to me again. Some things matter more than convenience. More than money. More than keeping the peace. The drive back to Queens took almost 2 hours. Traffic was terrible. The Belt Parkway was its usual nightmare. Stop and go. Brake lights stretching ahead for miles. I kept thinking about Dad's face. The anger in it. The complete lack of hesitation when he talked about putting down Nana's cat. Like it was nothing. Like whiskey was nothing. Kept thinking about Kevin standing there, silent, watching it all happen. About Mom in the other room, pretending she couldn't hear. These were the people who were supposed to love me, supposed to have my back, supposed to care about the things I cared about. By the time I pulled into my neighborhood, it was after 10 at night. Found parking 3 blocks from my building. Had to carry everything through the cold March wind. The carrier was heavy. Whiskey kept shifting his weight, making the whole thing swing awkwardly. Got to my apartment building. 3rd floor walk up. No elevator. Hauled everything up the stairs, trying not to bang the carrier against the walls. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Tiny studio with a kitchen alcove, a bathroom the size of a closet, and just enough space for a bed, a desk, and a small couch I'd found on the curb. The whole place was maybe 300 square feet. Rent was $1,400 a month, which was robbery, but that's Queens for you. I set the carrier down in the middle of the floor, put the food bag on the kitchen counter, placed that dirty dish by the sink, Opened the carrier door. Whiskey crept out slowly, low to the ground, tail puffed up. He explored the apartment cautiously, sniffed everything, checked under the bed, investigated the bathroom. I opened a can of the wet food I'd grabbed on the way out. Nana always gave him wet food at night. Scooped it into the dirty dish. Set it on the floor. Whiskey came over and started eating. The sound of his chewing was the only noise in the apartment. I collapsed on the couch. Every muscle ached, not from physical work, but from tension, from holding myself together while everything fell apart. Looked at my phone. No messages from family. Not that I expected any. We were done. That bridge wasn't just burned. It was incinerated. Pulled up my bank account. $178. Payday wasn't for another week. Cat food, and little would cost at least $40. I'd have to skip a few meals. Or pick up extra shifts. Figure out somehow. Whiskey finished eating. Licked the bowl clean. Then came over to the couch and jumped up next to me. Curled into a ball against my leg. Started purring. This deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through my whole body. I scratched behind his ears. The crooked one flopped forward. He pushed his head into my hand, demanding more attention. For the first time that day, I felt something other than anger and hurt. Felt like maybe I'd done one good thing. Saved one life from being ended for no reason other than convenience. That dirty dish sat by the sink, covered in dried food and cat spit, wobbling on its strange little feet. I had no idea what it was. No idea where it came from. Didn't care. It was just a bowl. A thing. Trash that my father had been right to throw away. But it was mine now. Like whiskey. Like this life I was trying to build despite everything. Mine. For whatever that was worth. I fell asleep on the couch with the cat on my chest and all the lights still on. Exhausted. Done. Ready for this day to be over. Didn't dream. Just darkness. Heavy and complete. When I woke up, everything would still be terrible. I'd still be broke. Still be cut off from my family. Still have no idea how I was going to make any of this work. But that night, in that moment, with that cat purring against my ribs and that worthless dish sitting in my sink, I felt something close to peace. Sometimes the trash you save is exactly what you need, even when you don't know it yet. A month passed. 31 days, to be exact. I know because I counted every single one of them on my calendar. Marking off each day, I managed to keep both myself and whiskey alive. 31 days of choosing between cat food and my own groceries. 31 days of ignoring calls from debt collectors. 31 days of pretending I had my life together when everything was actively falling apart. Living in Queens on what Best Buy paid me was like trying to fill a swimming pool with a leaky teaspoon. My paycheck disappeared the moment it hit my account. Rent took the biggest chunk. $1,400 for 300 square feet of glorified closet space. Then utilities. Then MetroCard for the subway. Then whatever was left on the food. And spoiler alert, there was never much left. I'd gotten good at eating cheap. Ramen became my best friend. The kind in the plastic wrapper that cost 29 cents at the corner bodega. I'd jazz it up with a fried egg if I was feeling fancy, or just eat it plain if I wasn't. Sometimes I'd skip lunch entirely and just drink a lot of water to feel full. Old college trick. Didn't work great, but it was free. Whiskey, on the other hand, ate like a king, or at least better than I did. I couldn't bring myself to cheap out on his food, partly because Nana would have killed me from beyond the grave, mostly because that cat had already lost everything. His home, his owner, his entire life upended because my family were monsters. The least I could do was feed him properly. So I bought the mid-range stuff. Not the fancy pate Nana used to get him, but not the bottom shelf garbage either. 9 lives in a can. About $1.50 per serving. He went through 1.5 cans a day. You do the math. That's over $60 a month just on cat food. Add litter, and I was spending close to $80 keeping this cat alive. Worth every penny. Whiskey was the only good thing in my life. I'd wash that weird bowl the day after I brought it home. Just a basic scrub with dish soap and a sponge. Nothing fancy. The dirt came off easily enough, and underneath was this strange pale blue-gray color, almost like the sky right after a storm when the clouds are breaking up, but the sun isn't quite out yet. The surface had all these tiny cracks running through it, like a shattered windshield, but the cracks were part of the design somehow. Made it look old, ancient even. The bowl still wobbled on those 3 little bumps on the bottom. Still looked kind of janky, but clean at least. I'd been using it as Whiskey's food bowl ever since. It sat on the floor near my kitchenette, next to his water dish. Every morning and evening I'd scoop cat food into it, and he'd demolish whatever I gave him. The bowl held up fine. Dishwasher safe, apparently. Not that I had a dishwasher. I just washed it by hand in the sink. Never thought twice about it. It was just a bowl, a thing. Functional. Ugly but functional. April in New York is a weird month. Too warm for winter coats. Too cold to trust that spring is actually here. The kind of weather that makes you question every clothing decision you make before leaving your apartment. I've been picking up extra shifts at Best Buy, work in the computer department, helping middle-aged people understand why they didn't need to spend $2,000 on a laptop just to check email. The money helped. Barely. I was still behind on my electric bill. Still avoiding phone calls from my credit card company. Still living that razor's edge existence where one unexpected expense would completely destroy me. My social life had evaporated. Hard to hang out with friends when you can't afford to go anywhere or do anything. Hard to date when you live in a studio apartment with a cat, and your bank account has 2 digits. I'd basically become a hermit. Work, home, sleep, work, home, sleep. Maybe watch some YouTube if I had energy. That was it. I started making TikTok videos because I was bored and lonely and needed some kind of human interaction, even if it was parasocial and through a screen. My content wasn't anything special, just me talking about my life. Broke millennial trying to survive in New York. Living paycheck to paycheck. That kind of thing. I wasn't trying to go viral or become an influencer. Just wanted to document the absurdity of my existence. Maybe connect with people going through similar struggles. Most of my videos got like 50 views. Maybe 100 if I was lucky. Mostly from other broke people nodding along in solidarity. The comment sections were supportive in that grim, gallows humor way that people develop when they're all drowning together. One Tuesday evening in late April, I was sitting on my floor eating ramen straight from the pot because I didn't feel like dirtying a bowl. Whiskey was next to me, licking his food bowl clean, making those satisfied cat sounds, tongue scraping against the ceramic. The light from my window was hitting the bowl at an angle, making that weird blue-gray glaze almost shimmer. I pulled out my phone, thought it would make a funny video. This is how we live, folks. Cat eats from a fancy bowl. I eat from a pot like a barbarian. I hit record, held the camera at arm's length, getting both me and the cat in frame. Started talking about the irony of the situation. How Whiskey had better dishware than I did. How I was using a bowl my dad literally called garbage to feed my cat, while I ate sodium-flavored sadness from a dented saucepan. The video was maybe 30 seconds long. Showed Whiskey licking the bowl. Showed me eating ramen. Made a joke about how at least one of us had standards. Posted it without thinking much about it. Then I went to bed because I had to open at Best Buy the next morning. And life doesn't stop just because you're tired. The video did okay. Couple hundred views by the next evening. Some likes. Few comments. The algorithm seemed to like it more than my usual stuff. Maybe because of the cat. Internet loves cats. Tale as old as time. Most comments were the usual supportive stuff. Hang in there, man. Been there, it gets better. Your cat is adorable. That sort of thing. Then I got a comment that made my stomach drop. It was from an account called ceramicsexpert_47. Profile picture was a Ming vase or something. Bio said they worked in art authentication. They commented 4 hours after I posted. The comment said, "Wait, stop. Is that a roux or brush washer? I'm serious. Turn that bowl over and look at the bottom. If there are 3 small bumps like sesame seeds, do not use it. Google roux or northern song right now." I read it 3 times. My first reaction was to laugh. Obviously, this person was messing with me. Some troll having fun with the poor kid eating ramen on the floor. Ruware? Brush washer? What the hell was a brush washer? But something about the comment felt different. The person wasn't being sarcastic. No laughing emojis. No or JK. Just straight information delivered with what seemed like genuine urgency. I looked at Whiskey's bowl, still on the floor where he'd left it, licked clean, glaze catching the overhead light. Couldn't hurt to Google it, just to see what this person was talking about. Probably some weird internet rabbit hole that would waste 20 minutes of my time before I realized it was nonsense. I opened Google, typed Ruwer Northern Song. The search results loaded. The first hit was a Wikipedia article. I clicked it, started reading. My hands went cold. Ruware, Chinese ceramics. Northern Song Dynasty, 1086 to 1106 AD. Produced for imperial use only. Fewer than 80 pieces confirmed to exist in the entire world. Characterized by blue-gray glaze with ice crackle patterns. Identification marks include sesame seed spurs on the base where the piece sat on supports in the kiln. Museums fought over these things. Collectors spent fortunes. A roux where dish sold at auction in 2017 for $37.7 million. $37.7 million. I couldn't breathe. This had to be a coincidence. Had to be. There was no way, absolutely no possible way that I'd been using a priceless Chinese artifact as a cat food bowl for a month. The universe didn't work like that. That kind of thing didn't happen to people like me. But the more I read, the sicker I felt. I'd wash this thing with Dawn dish soap, scrub it with a sponge, let hot water run over in my sink like it was a cereal bowl. I'd let a cat lick wet food off a glaze that emperors were afraid to breathe on. A museum piece. A national treasure of China. And I've been treating it like a 50-cent garage sale find. I clicked another link. Sotheby's auction house. Article about Ruwer characteristics. Photos of authenticated pieces. The color was exactly right. That specific pale blue-gray that I'd spent a month looking at every day. The article called it Sky After Rain. The crackle pattern in the glaze, fine as hair, covering the entire surface. Check and check. The article mentioned the sesame seed spurs. 3 small raised bumps on the base. The most reliable indicator of authentic Ruware because later forgeries didn't replicate this manufacturing detail accurately. My mouth had gone completely dry. I looked at the bowl again. Still sitting on my floor. Still just a bowl. But maybe not just a bowl. Maybe something else entirely. I needed to check the bottom. Stood up. My legs felt weird. Shaky. Like I'd been sitting too long. Or maybe like I was about to pass out. Probably both. Walked the 3 steps to where the bowl sat. Whiskey looked up at me from a spot on my bed. Curious about why I was suddenly so interested in his food dish. I bent down. Reached for the bowl. Hesitated. What if this person was right? What if this thing was actually valuable? What if I'd been washing it in my sink with Dawn dish soap and letting my cat eat from it like it was nothing? What if I dropped it right now? My hands were sweating, palms slick. That's the thing nobody tells you about high-stakes situations. Your body betrays you. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and suddenly you can't trust your own grip. I wiped my hands on my jeans, took a breath, reached for the bowl again, picked it up carefully, very carefully, cradling it like it was made of eggshells. It felt heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just hyper-aware of every detail now. The texture of the glaze against my fingertips. Smooth, but not slippery. The weight distribution. Solid, well-made, old in a way that cheap modern ceramics never feel. Turned it over slowly. The bottom was fully glazed. The same sky blue color as the rest of the bowl. That stopped me cold. Most ceramics have a rough, unglazed ring on the bottom. Raw clay. But this was smooth glass everywhere. That pale blue-gray covering every surface. Except for 3 tiny points. 3 small oval spots where the glaze had been scraped away, exposing the clay underneath. Ash-gray clay. Each spot was maybe a 1/4 inch across. Rough. Irregular. Exactly like the pictures I'd just seen. The sesame seed spurs. The reason they existed clicked in my brain. If the whole bowl was glaze, including the bottom, it would stick to the kiln floor during firing. So they used little supports, clay spurs that held the piece up while it baked. The glaze melted around those contact points, leaving these marks. Proof of how it was made. Proof of authenticity. Something forgers couldn't easily replicate, because most didn't fully glaze the bottom. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the floor, still holding the bowl. Couldn't put it down. Couldn't trust myself to set it anywhere safely. The bowl that had been holding cat food. The bowl my father had kicked across the floor. The bowl I'd been washing in my sink with hot water and soap. Pulled out my phone with one hand. Awkward. Nearly dropped the bowl doing it. Heart attack moment. Caught it. Barely. Google with my thumb. Ruware brush washer, how to identify. More articles. More photos. More information that I desperately needed and desperately didn't want. Brush washer. Small, shallow bowl used by Chinese scholars to clean calligraphy brushes. The shape was distinct. Wide. Shallow. Exactly like what I was holding. Authentication points. Color the glaze, crackle pattern quality. The sesame seed spurs. Fully glazed bottom, weight. How the clay aged. Every single characteristic matched. I found a forum. Ceramic collectors discussing Ruware. Someone had posted asking how to tell real from fake. The responses were detailed. Technical. These people knew their stuff. One comment stood out. Authentic Ruware has a specific quality to the glaze. It's called agate glaze because they mix powdered agate into the formula. It gives the surface a depth that's impossible to replicate. The color seems to shift depending on the light. Sky after rain. That's the classic description. You know it when you see it. I held the bowl up to my window. Evening light coming through. The glaze caught the light and seemed to glow from within. Layers of color. Blue, gray, hints of green, like looking into shallow water. Sky after rain. Exactly. Another article. Christie's Auction House. Discussing the rarity of Ruware. Only one kiln site confirmed. Production lasted maybe 20 years. Imperial patronage only. When the dynasty fell, the kiln closed. The formula for the glaze was lost. Nobody successfully reproduced it for centuries. The article listed known, authentic pieces. Major museums. Private collections. Each piece documented. Photographed. Authenticated by multiple experts. Famous in the ceramics world. Prices when pieces sold at auction. Low end was a few million. High end was at $37.7 million sale in Hong Kong. Even damaged pieces went for 7 figures. A bowl with a chip in the rim sold for $2.8 million. I looked at the bowl in my hands. No chips. No cracks other than the intentional crackle pattern. No damage that I could see. A month of use and it looked perfect. I was holding multi-million-dollar artwork in my sweaty hands while sitting on the floor of my apartment in Queens. This couldn't be real. Had to be a replica. Had to be one of those tourist shop knockoffs. Something Nana bought at a flea market because she thought it looked pretty. But the spurs, the iron foot, the glaze quality, the weight, everything matched. I went back to TikTok. Found that comment again. Ceramics expert _47. Clicked their profile. Their videos were all about antique pottery, authentication guides, museum visits. This person was legit, actually worked in the field. I messaged them directly, hands shaking so hard I could barely type. Are you serious about the Ruware thing? I checked the bottom. It has the 3 bumps. What'd I do? Response came back in less than 5 minutes. Don't touch it with bare hands anymore. Oil from skin can damage the glaze over time. Don't wash it again. Don't let the cat near it. Wrap it in soft cloth and secure it immediately. If this is authentic Northern Song Ruware, and it appears it might be, you are holding one of the most valuable ceramic objects on the planet. The last authenticated piece sold for nearly $38 million. Contact Sotheby's or Christie's Chinese Ceramics Department immediately. Do not post more videos. Do not tell anyone. Get professional authentication and secure storage. This is not a joke. $30 to $40 million. I read the message again. And again, the words didn't change. The numbers didn't change. I was sitting on my floor in my studio apartment in Queens, behind on my electric bill, eating ramen for dinner, holding something worth more than most people would earn in 1,000 lifetimes. I set the bowl down, very gently, on a folded towel on my counter, furthest point from anything that could knock it over. Stepped back, looked at it, just a bowl, 6 inches across. Shallow, pale blue-gray, covered in those hairline cracks. Whiskey jumped up on the counter, walked toward the bowl. I grabbed him, pulled him away, maybe too roughly because he yowled in protest. Didn't care. Couldn't risk him knocking it over. Couldn't risk anything. My brain was doing that thing where it can't process too much information at once, so it just kind of freezes. Static. White noise. The world had fundamentally changed in the last 20 minutes, but I was still the same person standing in the same apartment with the same problems, except now with one additional catastrophic problem. I owned something worth tens of millions of dollars. In Queens, in a building with shitty locks, and a landlord who let anyone into the building, in a neighborhood where people got mugged for their phones. I grabbed a bath towel from my closet, clean one, wrapped the bowl carefully, like I was swaddling a baby, tucked the edges in, made sure it couldn't move or shift. Where do you hide something priceless in a 300-square-foot apartment? Under the bed? Too obvious. In a drawer? Too accessible. Closet? Same problem. I looked at the bathroom. Tiny, barely bigger than an airplane bathroom. Toilet, sink, shower. No storage. Wait, the toilet tank. I'd seen that in movies. People hiding things in toilet tanks. Waterproof if wrapped properly. Nobody thinks to look there. Criminals hide drugs that way. Prisoners hide contraband. Same principle. I lifted the ceramic lid off the back of my toilet, set it carefully on the closed seat. The tank was about half full of water. Room at the top. Plenty of space. Took a garbage bag from under my sink. Double-bagged the towel-wrap bowl. Tied the bags tight. Checked for any way water could get in. Seemed solid. Lowered the bundle into the toilet tank. It floated. Too much air in the bags. I needed weight. Took a roll of quarters from my desk. Emergency laundry money. $40 worth of quarters I'd been saving. Dropped in the bag. Tied it again. Lowered it back in. Slowly. So slowly. My hand was shaking. The plastic bag descended through the water. The ceramic inside clinked softly against the porcelain tank. I held my breath. If I cracked it now, I'd be flushing $30 million down the drain. Literally. The bundle settled at the bottom. Safe. I exhaled. This time it stayed down. Hidden. Nobody would find it unless they specifically pulled the tank lid off and looked inside. Replaced the lid. Stepped back. Looked at my toilet like it was a time bomb. My entire life had just changed. Everything. All of it. But I couldn't tell anyone. Couldn't celebrate. Couldn't even process what this meant because if word got out, if anyone knew, I'd be robbed within a day. Or worse. Sat on my bed. Whiskey climbed into my lap. Started purring. Completely unaware that his food bowl was worth more than every building on our block combined. I pulled out my phone. Stared at that message from ceramics expert _47. Read it again. The part about $30 to $40 million. That was life-changing money. That was never work again money. That was buy a house in cash money. That was help everyone you know money. That was security for life money. That was also get robbed and murdered money if the wrong people found out. I needed to think, needed a plan, needed to figure out what to do next. But all I could think about was that bowl, sitting in my toilet tank, Rue Northern Song Dynasty, one of fewer than 80 pieces in the world, something emperors used, something museums would kill to own, something my father threw at me in anger because he thought it was worthless garbage. The irony was almost too much, almost funny. Would have been hilarious if I wasn't absolutely terrified. I'd save Whiskey from being euthanized. In return, Whiskey had been eating from a piece of ceramic worth enough to buy a small island. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Outside my window, Queens went about its business. Traffic on the street, people walking home from work, someone yelling in Russian at their phone. Normal city sounds. Normal city life. My life was no longer normal. I was 19 years old, barely making rent, had $200 in my bank account, and I owned something worth more than most people would see in 100 lifetimes. I couldn't tell my family. They'd sue me, claim the bowl was part of Nana's estate. They'd win, too, probably. Even with a video of Dad giving it to me, they'd find some legal angle. They had money for lawyers. I had nothing. Couldn't tell my friends. Too risky. Word would spread. Someone would talk. Someone always talks. Couldn't tell my landlord, my boss, my co-workers. Nobody. Absolutely nobody. I was completely alone with this knowledge, this burden, this impossible, terrifying, life-changing secret. I thought about that TikTok video. Still up. Still public. Hundreds of people had seen it now. The algorithm was pushing it. More views every time I checked. More comments. Most people just saw a sad guy with a cat. But ceramics expert _47 had seen something else. And if they'd seen it, others might too. People who knew what they were looking at. People with worse intentions. I deleted the video. Immediately. Didn't even hesitate. Gone. Removed from the internet as much as something can be removed from the internet. Which is to say, not really at all, because someone had probably already downloaded it or screenshot it, but at least it wasn't actively spreading anymore. Check my other videos. Deleted anything that showed my apartment in detail. Anything that might help someone identify where I lived. Paranoid? Maybe, but also maybe not paranoid enough. Whiskey was still purring in my lap. Completely content. Fed, safe, loved. Living his best life while I had a mental breakdown about ceramics. I petted him. Felt his bones under his fur. He'd gained a little weight this month. Looked healthier. Less skeletal. That was good. At least I'd done one thing right. Looked around my apartment. Really looked at it. The peeling paint. The radiator that clanked at night. The window that didn't quite close all the way. The floor that sloped toward one corner. The water stain on the ceiling from the apartment above. This place cost me $1,400 a month. Half my income. Most of what I earned. In my toilet tank was enough money to buy this entire building. And every building around it. And probably half the neighborhood. The weight of it hit me then. Really hit me. Not the dollar amount. The responsibility. I was responsible for keeping this thing safe. This piece of history. This artwork. This window into a civilization that existed 1,000 years ago. Craftsmen had made it. An emperor had commissioned it. Scholars had used it. It had survived wars, revolutions, centuries of upheaval. And now it was in my toilet tank in Queens because I'd saved a cat. If I screwed this up, if I lost it or broke it or let it get stolen, that was it. Gone. Irreplaceable. One fewer piece of human cultural heritage existing in the world. No pressure. I needed to sleep. Had to work tomorrow. Life continued even when your entire world got flipped upside down. Bills didn't care about ancient Chinese ceramics. Best Buy didn't care. The MTA didn't care. I still needed to get up, put on my blue shirt, and help people pick out laptops. But I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the building made me jump. Every footstep in the hallway. Every door closing. Every siren on the street. Hyper-vigilant doesn't begin to cover it. Whiskey eventually fell asleep on my chest. His weight was comforting, grounding. At least he was real. At least he was simple. Feed the cat. Pet the cat. Cat purrs. Cat sleeps. That made sense. Chinese imperial ceramics worth tens of millions of dollars hidden in toilet tanks did not make sense. Around 3 a.m, I finally dozed off. Fitful sleep. Anxiety dreams about dropping things. Breaking things. Losing things. Woke up every hour checking my phone. Checking the bathroom door. Making sure everything was still real and still there. At 6 my alarm went off. Time for work. Time to pretend everything was normal. Time to be a regular person with a regular life who didn't have a secret that would change everything if anyone found out. I checked the toilet tank before I left. Bowl still there. Safe. Hidden. Locked my door. Checked it twice. Considered getting a better lock, but didn't want to draw attention by suddenly upgrading security. Walked to the subway. Got on the train. Rode to work. Clocked in. Smiled at customers. Answered questions about RAM and processors, and whether they really needed Microsoft Office or if Google Docs would work. Normal day. Completely normal. Nothing to see here. Except I couldn't stop thinking about that bowl. Sitting in my apartment. Waiting. $30 million in my toilet tank while I made $12.50 an hour explaining the difference between HDDs and SSDs to people who would never remember. The disconnect was surreal. Dystopian. Absurd. This was my life now. This was what happened when you saved a cat. When you stood up to your family. When you refused to let something innocent die just because it was convenient. The universe had rewarded me. Or cursed me. Still wasn't sure which. Maybe both. Definitely both. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to contact Sotheby's. 3 days of sleepless nights. Staring at my ceiling. Listening to every sound in my building. 3 days of calling in sick to Best Buy because I couldn't focus on anything except that bowl in my toilet tank. 3 days of researching how authentication worked, what to expect, whether they'd even take me seriously. I was terrified of taking it on the subway. The thought of carrying something worth tens of millions on public transportation, surrounded by strangers, anyone whom could bump into me or rob me or accidentally cause a disaster, made my stomach turn. But I couldn't afford an Uber to Manhattan. Couldn't justify spending $40 on a car service when I had $17 left until payday. So I wrapped the bowl in every towel I owned, put it in my backpack with my winter coat, wadded around it for extra padding, and took the 7 train into the city with my heart trying to escape through my rib cage. Every jostle made me flinch. Every time the train lurched to a stop. Every person who stood too close. I held that backpack against my chest like it contained my entire life, which technically it did. Sotheby's was on the Upper East Side, York Avenue. The building looked like money, all glass and modern architecture. The kind of place where even the doorman probably made more than I did in a year. I stood outside for 10 minutes, just staring at the entrance, trying to convince myself I belonged there. I didn't belong there. I was a 19-year-old Best Buy employee in jeans and a hoodie, carrying a backpack that smelled like cat food because whiskey had rubbed against it that morning. But I had an appointment. I'd called ahead. They were expecting me, even if they probably thought I was wasting their time. The lobby was all marble and quiet conversations. People moved through the space like they owned it. Expensive watches, designer clothes, the kind of casual wealth that doesn't need to announce itself. I felt like a stain on the carpet. I gave my name to the receptionist. She looked me up and down with barely concealed skepticism, but made a phone call anyway. Told me someone would be down shortly. Gestured to a seating area with chairs that probably cost more than my rent. I sat, waited, tried not to sweat through my shirt. 15 minutes later, a woman appeared. Mid-50s, maybe. Gray hair pulled back. Glasses on a chain around her neck. Dressed in all black like she was attending a very elegant funeral. She introduced herself as Dr. Helen Zhao, head of Chinese ceramics. Her handshake was firm, professional. Her expression said she'd seen 1,000 people like me walk through these doors with grandmother's tchotchkes thinking they'd struck gold. We went upstairs to her office. More glass, more modern furniture. A desk that was somehow intimidating just by existing. She gestured for me to sit. I set my backpack on her desk carefully. Started unwrapping layers of towels. Dr. Zhao watched with that patient expression experts develop when they're humoring someone, but already know they're about to deliver bad news. Then I pulled out the bowl. Her expression didn't change immediately. Professional poker face. She reached for a pair of white cotton gloves. Put them on with practiced efficiency. Took the bowl from my hands like it might be contagious. Turned it over. Examined the bottom. Looked at the spurs. Then she went very still. She pulled out a jeweler's loop. Magnifying glass on a headband. Looked at the glaze under magnification. Ran her gloved finger over the surface. Turned the bowl in the light, watching how the color shifted. Set it down gently on a padded cloth on her desk. Removed the loupe. Looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time since I'd walked in. Asked me where I got it. Her voice had changed. No longer patient condescension. Now sharp, focused, urgent. I told her the whole story. My grandmother's house. The fight with my dad. The cat food bowl. The TikTok comment. All of it. Showed her the video on my phone. The one from that night. Dad shoving the bowl at me. His voice captured clearly on audio. Dr. Zhao watched the video twice. Took notes. Asked me questions. When had my grandmother acquired it? I didn't know. How long had it been in the family? No idea. Had anyone else claimed ownership? Not yet, but probably soon. She picked up her office phone. Made a call. Spoke in rapid Mandarin to someone. Listened. Responded. Hung up. Told me she needed to run some tests. Non-invasive. Just examination under different lighting conditions and comparison to known exemplars. Would take a few hours. Could I wait? I could wait. I had nowhere else to be. Had called out of work. Had no life beyond this moment anyway. She left with the bowl. I sat in her office for 3 hours, staring at art books on Chinese ceramics, drinking water from a bottle someone brought me, watching the sun move across the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Try not to think about what would happen if she came back and told me it was fake, or what would happen if she confirmed it was real. Both outcomes terrified me in different ways. When Dr. Zhao returned, she wasn't alone. 2 other specialists, an older man with a British accent and a younger woman taking photographs. They set the bowl down on the padded cloth, treated it like a religious artifact, which, in a sense, it was. Dr. Zhao sat across from me, folded her hands on her desk, said the words that would change everything. Authenticated. Northern Song Dynasty. Ru Ware brush washer. One of perhaps 70 to 80 known examples worldwide. Possibly imperial. The quality suggested court production. Estimated auction value between $30 and $40 million. The room tilted. Or maybe I tilted and the room stayed still. Hard to tell. She kept talking. Something about consignment agreements and insurance and security and auction timing. Her words turned into white noise. All I could hear was that number echoing in my skull. 30 to 40 million. 30 to 40 million. 30 to 40 million. I signed papers. Don't remember what they said. Just signed where they pointed. They took more photographs. Of me. Of the bowl. For their records. For the auction catalog. For proof that this had really happened. They would handle everything. Storage. Insurance. Marketing. The auction would be in 6 weeks. Private viewing for serious collectors. Then the public sale. They'd handle security. Transportation. All of it. I just needed to show up and sign more papers. I left the building in a daze. Walked to the subway without seeing anything. Got on the train without remembering the journey. My backpack was empty now. The bowl was in a climate-controlled vault somewhere in that building, insured for an amount of money that made my head hurt. My phone started buzzing on the train ride home. At first I ignored it. Probably spam. Probably best by asking where I was. Probably nothing important. But it kept buzzing. Text after text. Call after call. Something was wrong. I pulled it out. 53 notifications. Missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Texts from old friends I hadn't talked to in months. Voicemails piling up. And one notification that made my blood run cold. News alert. New York Times. Rare Chinese bowl discovered in Queens set for auction. They'd announced it. Sotheby's had put out a press release. The bowl was news. International news. Art world news. The kind of story that media outlets loved. Working class kid finds priceless artifact. Modern day treasure hunt. American dream narrative. My name was in the article. My neighborhood. Not my exact address. Thank God. But enough details that anyone who knew me would put together immediately. I opened my voicemail. First message was from Kevin. His voice came through the speaker. Barely controlled rage. Screaming about betrayal and theft in family. How I'd stolen from Nana's estate. How that bowl belonged to all of us. How I'd manipulated Dad during a moment of grief to steal something valuable. How he'd seen the news and recognized the bowl immediately. How I was going to prison for this. How they'd destroy me. The message went on for 2 minutes. Threats. Accusations. Venom. Second voicemail was from Dad. Calmer than Kevin, but somehow more menacing. Told me to return the bowl. Said we could work this out as a family. Said if I didn't make this right, he'd have no choice but to involve lawyers. Said I'd always been ungrateful, and this proved it. Said I was breaking his heart. Said Nana would be ashamed of me. The manipulation was thick enough to choke on. Third voicemail was from a number I didn't recognize. A lawyer representing my father and brother, informing me that legal action was being considered, advising me to secure my own counsel. Very professional, very terrifying. I got off at my stop, walked home in a fog. This was happening. The thing I'd feared since the moment I found out what the bowl was worth. My family was coming for it. For me. For everything. Text messages kept arriving. Some supportive from friends who'd seen the news. Most were from people I barely knew, suddenly very interested in my life. Acquaintances asking if I needed anything. Distant cousins I'd met once at a wedding suddenly wanting to reconnect. Vultures circling. I made it to my apartment, locked the door, triple-checked it, sat on my floor with whiskey in my lap, and tried to think. They'd have a case. Maybe. The bowl was in Nana's house. Technically part of her estate. Dad could argue he didn't know what he was giving away. Claim I'd taken advantage. Argue that if he'd known the value, he never would have let me have it. But I had the video. His voice. His words. His action. Giving me the bowl, explicitly angrily, but giving it nonetheless. That had to count for something. Had to be proof that it was mine. That he'd given it to me. Consequences be damned. 2 days later, a courier knocked on my door. Legal documents. Thick envelope. Official seals. My hands shook as I signed for it. Lawsuit. Conversion. Theft of estate property. Demand for immediate return of the ceramic bowl, described in attached exhibits. Temporary restraining order requested. Emergency hearing scheduled. They were going for the throat. I called Sotheby's in a panic. Got transferred to their legal department. Explained the situation. They were calm. Professional. Said this happened sometimes with major fines. Family disputes. Estate claims. They had lawyers on retainer for exactly this situation. Would I like them to recommend counsel? Yes. Please. Immediately. Within hours I was on the phone with an attorney. Richard Brennan. Sounded old. Experienced. Expensive. He listened to my story. Asked to see the video. I sent it. He called back 30 minutes later. We had a case. Strong case. The video was gold. Clear evidence of a gift. Even if given in anger, still a gift. The doctrine of mistake of value would protect me. If someone gives you something without knowing its worth, they can't take it back just because they later learn it's valuable. Basic contract law. Gift law. We'd win this. Probably. Probably wasn't certainty. But it was better than nothing. The hearing was set for 2 days before the scheduled auction. Perfect timing to cause maximum chaos. My father's lawyers had gotten a judge to issue a temporary restraining order. The bowl couldn't be sold until the dispute was resolved. If we lost the hearing, if the judge sided with my family, the auction would be postponed indefinitely. We'd be stuck in litigation for years. The money would be frozen. Everything would be in limbo. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. This was it. Everything came down to one hearing, one judge, one decision. The day of the hearing arrived. Manhattan Civil Court. The building was all bureaucracy and fluorescent lighting. Nothing like the elegant halls of Sotheby's. This was where real people fought over real problems. Divorce, landlord disputes, small claims. And now, a $30 million ceramic bowl. My lawyer met me outside. Brennan was exactly what I'd imagined. Late 60s. Gray suit. Leather briefcase that looked older than I was. Calm in a way that only comes from doing this 1,000 times. He reviewed our strategy on the courthouse steps. Keep it simple. Show the video. Let the evidence speak for itself. My family's lawyers were inside. 3 of them. Expensive suits. Designer briefcases. They'd spent serious money on this. Must have believed they could win. Or at least believed the bowl was worth the gamble. Dad and Kevin were there too. Sitting in the hallway outside the courtroom. We didn't make eye contact. Couldn't. If I looked at them, I might lose my nerve. Might remember they were family. Might feel guilt. Couldn't afford guilt right now. The courtroom was small. Not like TV. Just a room with benches and a judge's desk, and that weird institutional smell all government buildings have. The judge was a black woman in her 50s. Judge Patricia Morrison, according to the nameplate on her desk. She looked tired. Probably had 20 other cases to hear today. Probably didn't care about our family drama. We sat. The lawyers introduced themselves. Judge Morrison asked for opening statements. My family's attorney went first. Painted a picture of confusion and grief. A family dealing with loss. A father who'd been manipulated during a vulnerable moment. How could anyone expect him to know what he was giving away? How could a teenage boy take advantage of his own father's ignorance? The bowl was part of the estate. Should have been properly appraised. Should have been divided among all heirs. Instead, this young man had seized it for himself. Converted estate property for personal gain. The law was clear. Intent required knowledge. Without knowledge of value, there could be no true gift. It sounded convincing. Too convincing. I could see the judge taking notes, nodding slightly. Then Brennan stood. Old school. Didn't use notes. Just spoke directly to the judge. Started with contract law. Mistake of value versus mistake of fact. If you sell someone a painting thinking it's a copy, and it turns out to be an original, too bad. If you give someone a stone thinking it's quartz, and it's actually a diamond, too bad. Mistake of value doesn't void a transaction. The law is clear on this. Has been for centuries. Then he talked about gifts. Inter vivos gifts. Gifts between living people. 3 requirements. Intent to give. Delivery of the object. Acceptance by the recipient. All 3 elements clearly present here. Did opposing counsel dispute that the defendant's father handed him this bowl? Did they dispute that the father's words indicated intent to transfer ownership? Did they dispute that the defendant accepted and took possession? They couldn't dispute any of it, because it was all on video. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Asked to see this video, everyone kept mentioning. Brennan pulled out a laptop, queued up the footage. The bailiff set up a screen. We all watched. The video played in the silent courtroom. Grainy phone camera footage. My perspective that night. Dad's face, red with anger. His voice cutting through the audio. Kevin in the background, silent as always. Mom appearing in the doorway. The moment where Dad grabbed the bowl. His words. Clear as day. Even with the emotion, even with the anger, his words were clear. Take the cat. Take the mess. Take this piece of junk. Take it all. Get out. All of it yours. Don't want to see you or your garbage again. Then him physically pushing the bowl toward me. Shoving it. The image shaking as I grabbed everything and ran. The video ended. Silence in the courtroom. Judge Morrison looked at my father. Asked if that was him in the video. He had to admit it was. Asked if those were his words. He hesitated. His lawyer whispered something. He admitted they were his words, but claimed he was emotional, not thinking clearly. Didn't mean them literally. The judge's expression didn't change, but I could sense the shift. She'd heard every excuse, every rationalization, every attempt to undo consequences. This was just another case of someone wanting a do-over, because they didn't like the outcome. She asked Dad directly if he'd give me the bowl. Not sold. Not loaned. Given. Yes or no. His lawyer tried to object. She shut it down. Asked again. Yes or no. Did you give this bowl to your son? Dad looked at Kevin. Looked at his lawyers. Looked at me for the first time since this started. I saw something in his face. Anger, yeah, but also something else. Embarrassment, maybe. Shame. The realization that he was sitting in court trying to take back garbage he'd thrown at his son in anger. He admitted it, quietly. Yes, he'd given me the bowl, but he hadn't known what it was. Hadn't known the value. Would never have given it away if he'd known. That had to matter. Didn't that matter? Judge Morrison leaned back in her chair. Started speaking. Her voice was measured, patient, the voice of someone who'd explained the law 1,000 times to people who didn't want to hear it. The doctrine of mistake of value was well established. If you give someone an object without knowing its worth, that ignorance doesn't invalidate the gift. The intent to transfer ownership was clear from the video. The words were explicit. The delivery was physical and immediate. The acceptance was obvious. All elements of a valid inter vivos gift were present. Furthermore, the circumstances suggested the donor wanted to be rid of the object, called it junk, called it garbage, expressed desire to never see it again. Hard to argue lack of intent when the intent to dispose of the object was so clearly stated. The fact that the object turned out to be valuable was immaterial. Mistake of value. Basic legal principle. Applicable here. The court did not see a likelihood of success for the plaintiffs on the merits of the case. The motion for preliminary injunction was denied. The temporary restraining order would be lifted. The auction could proceed as scheduled. If the plaintiffs wished to pursue further litigation regarding the proceeds after the sale, that was their right. But the item itself was released from restriction. The defendant had established sufficient evidence of ownership. The gavel came down. Just like that. Over. Done. Won. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process. Brennan was shaking my hand, congratulating me. His fee would come out of the auction proceeds. Standard arrangement. Once he'd seen the Sotheby's estimate letter, he'd stopped asking for a retainer. 30 to 40 million made the risk worth taking. I'd still walk away with more money than I could imagine. He'd been confident we'd win. The video made it easy. Clear-cut case. Across the courtroom, my family was standing. Kevin's face was red. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Their lawyers were packing up, probably already calculating their own fees for this failed venture. We left through different exits. Didn't speak. Didn't acknowledge each other. What was there to say? They'd tried to take from me and lost. The law had chosen a side. That side wasn't theirs. Outside the courthouse, Brennan shook my hand again. Told me Sotheby's would be in touch about the auction date. Everything was clear to proceed now. The sale would happen. My life was about to change. He seemed genuinely happy for me. Like he understood what this meant beyond just winning a case. I took the subway home. Same train. Same route. Same city. But everything was different. In 2 days, that bowl would be auctioned. In 2 days, I'd know exactly what my father's anger was worth in dollars. The irony was almost poetic. He'd thrown garbage at me, told me to take my trash and leave. That trash was about to make me wealthy beyond anything he'd ever achieve. Sometimes karma works fast. Sometimes justice is just math. Auction day. I didn't go to Sotheby's. Couldn't handle it. The crowd. The press. The spectacle. Instead, I stayed in my apartment with whiskey and watched the live stream on my laptop. Brennan was there representing me, would handle the formalities. I just needed to wait. The auction started at 2 p.m. Asian art sale. The bowl was lot 847. I watched them auction other pieces first. Jade, paintings, bronzes. Prices climbed into 6 figures like it was nothing. The auctioneer's voice was hypnotic, practiced, making millions of dollars sound casual. Then lot 847. The bowl appeared on screen, displayed on a pedestal under perfect lighting. That pale blue-gray glaze looking ethereal. Museum-quality photography. The auctioneer gave the provenance. Recently discovered. Authenticated. Rare. One of fewer than 80 known examples. Opening bid $5 million. The bidding started. Paddles up. Phone banks lighting up. Online bids coming in. The price climbed fast. 6 million. 7. 8. 10. 15. 20. The increments were $1 million at a time. People were bidding entire fortunes like it was loose change. 25, 30, 32. The pace slowed, down to 3 bidders. Phone, online, and someone in the room. 33, 34, 35. The auctioneer's voice stayed calm. Asked for 36. Pause. Asked again. Longer pause. Going once. Going twice. 36. Phone bid. 37. Online counter. Pause. Silence. The auctioneer looked around. Asked for 38. Nothing. Going once. Going twice. The gavel hung in the air. Sold. Hammer price. $33 million. With buyer's premium added, the price realized came to $37.7 million total. My laptop screen showed the gavel falling. Applause in the auction room. The bowl had set a record. Second highest price ever paid for roux-ware. The buyer was anonymous. Some collector. Some museum. Someone with enough money that nearly $40 million was an acceptable price for beauty. My phone rang. Brennan, congratulating me, explaining the next steps. Sotheby's would take their commission, 20%, then taxes, federal, state, New York City. Roughly half would disappear to various entities and governments. But what remained would still be life-changing. The wire transfer would take a few days. They'd send preliminary paperwork. I'd need to set up proper accounts. Hire a financial advisor. Make decisions about investment and security. Rich people problems. The kind of problems I never thought I'd have. 3 days later, sitting at my desk in my apartment, my phone buzzed. Bank notification. Deposit received. I opened the app. The numbers didn't look real. Too many digits. My brain couldn't process them as actual money. Just abstract symbols on a screen. But they were real. The balance showed $18 million, $450,000. And change. Literal change. Cents on the end of $18 million. I stared at it for 10 minutes, waiting for it to disappear. Waiting for someone to call and say there had been a mistake, waiting for reality to reassert itself. But the numbers stayed, solid, real, mine. Whiskey jumped in my lap, purred, completely unaware that his existence had justified all of this, that saving him had led here, that refusing to let him die had somehow resulted in me having more money than my father would earn in multiple lifetimes. I petted him, scratched behind his crooked ear, listened to him purr. The next week was a blur. Meetings with financial advisors, lawyers, accountants, everyone wanting to help me manage my sudden wealth. Everyone taking their cut while calling it a service. But they were helpful, necessary. I had no idea what to do with this much money, how to protect it, invest it, keep it from disappearing as fast as it arrived. I quit Best Buy, didn't give 2 weeks' notice. Just quit, sent an email, done. Never wearing that blue shirt again. Never explaining the difference between HDMI cables again. Free. Told my landlord I was moving. Gave him a month's notice out of courtesy, even though I could have broken the lease, and paid the penalty without blinking. Found a realtor. Started looking at houses. Not mansions. Not penthouses. Just normal houses in normal neighborhoods. Places with yards. Places where a cat could look out windows at birds. Found one in Westchester. Quiet street. Good schools, though that didn't matter to me. Old trees. Brick exterior. 3 bedrooms, which was 2 more than I needed, but it felt right. The yard was big, fenced, safe. The kitchen had windows that got morning light. The whole place felt like peace, like an exhale after holding your breath for years. Made an offer. Cash. No mortgage. No debt. Just bought it outright. The seller's agent looked at me like I'd grown a second head. 19-year-old kid buying a house in cash. Must have thought I was a drug dealer or a trust fund baby. Neither. Just someone who saved a cat and got lucky. Moved in a month later. Didn't have much to move. My furniture from Queens was garage sale garbage. Left most of it. Bought new stuff. Not expensive stuff. Just clean. Comfortable. Mine. The first morning in the new house, I woke up to silence. No traffic, no neighbors yelling, no sirens, just quiet, birdsong outside, sunlight through curtains. Whiskey sleeping on the foot of the bed in a patch of warm light. Went downstairs, made coffee in my new kitchen, stood at the window looking at my yard, property I owned, land with my name on the deed. The absurdity of it hadn't faded, probably never would. Whiskey came downstairs, meowed for breakfast, same routine, different location. I pulled out a can of 9 Lives, grabbed a new bowl from the cabinet, ceramic, blue, cheap, bought it at Target for $9. Dishwasher safe, microwave safe, cat safe, scooped food into it, set it on the floor. Whiskey dug in immediately. Happy, Federal loved, living his best life in a house that existed because I refused to let him die. I knelt down, scratched behind his ears while he ate, listened to him chew, watched him attack his breakfast like he hadn't eaten in days, even though I'd fed him 6 hours ago. Told him he'd earned this. All of it. The house, the peace, the security. If not for him, I'd still be in that Queens apartment, eating ramen, barely surviving. If not for him, I'd have let my father put him down, would have walked away from that house with nothing, would have remained poor and angry and stuck. But I'd saved him, and in saving him, saved myself. The universe worked in strange ways. Karma took weird forms. Sometimes trash turned into treasure. Sometimes the thing everyone else discarded was exactly what you needed. Sometimes standing up for what was right, even when it cost you everything, paid back more than you could imagine. My phone buzzed. Text message. Number I didn't recognize. Opened it. Kevin. Somehow, he'd gotten my new number. The message was short, bitter. Told me I'd torn the family apart. Said Dad was humiliated. Said I'd destroyed everything over greed. Said I'd regret this. Hoped the money was worth it. Hoped I could live with myself. I read it twice. Felt nothing. No anger. No guilt. No regret. Just empty. They had a chance to be family. Had a chance to care about something other than money. They'd chosen differently. That was on them. Blocked the number. Deleted the message. They were part of a life I didn't live anymore. A chapter that was closed. I'd tried to be good to them. Tried to save something that mattered. They responded by trying to take it from me. That told me everything I needed to know about who they were. I'd moved on. They could stay in the past where they belonged. Months passed. Summer turned to fall. I settled into this new life. This new reality where I didn't worry about money. Where I could buy groceries without checking my account first. Where I could go to a restaurant without calculating the tip before I ordered. Where emergencies weren't catastrophic, just expensive. And expensive was manageable now. I didn't blow the money on stupid stuff. Didn't buy a Ferrari or a yacht or whatever rich people were supposed to buy. Invested most of it. Conservative portfolios. Bonds. Index funds. Boring stuff that would grow slowly and steadily. Made sure I'd never be poor again. Made sure this windfall wouldn't evaporate through stupidity. Donated some. Anonymously. Animal shelters mostly. No-kill shelters specifically. Places that saved animals like whiskey. Places that believed every life mattered. Felt right. Felt like paying it forward. The rest sat in accounts, earning interest, giving me freedom. The freedom to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. No pressure. No rush. Just possibility. I started taking classes. Community college. No particular major. Just learning. History. Art. Literature. Things I'd never had time for when I was working paycheck to paycheck. Turned out I liked learning when it wasn't attached to stress and debt. Might finish a degree. Might not. Didn't matter. I had time. Made some friends. Real ones. People who knew me before they knew about the money. People who liked me for me, not for what I could do for them. Turns out it's easier to meet genuine people when you're not desperate, when you're not afraid, when you can be selective about who you let into your life. Dated a little. Nothing serious. Still figuring out who I was in this new version of my life. Hard to build something real when you're still under construction yourself. But it was nice, casual, fun, no pressure, just possibility. 1 year after the auction, I got a letter, forwarded from my old address. Return address I didn't recognize. Open it carefully, suspicious of anything that looked legal. It was from Dr. Zhao at Sotheby's. Handwritten note, elegant script. She was writing to tell me the bowl had been donated to a museum. The buyer had been an anonymous collector who'd purchased it specifically to donate it. It was now on permanent display at the National Palace Museum in Taiwan, part of their Ru-ware collection, available for scholars to study, for the public to see, preserved for future generations. She'd enclosed a photograph, the bowl in a glass case, perfect lighting, small placard explaining its history, its journey from Northern Song dynasty kills to a house in New Jersey, to a cat food bowl, to a museum. The placard mentioned me, the 19-year-old who'd saved it, who'd recognized its value when everyone else saw trash. The note ended with a line that made me smile. Sometimes the most precious things come to us in disguise. We just have to be wise enough to see them. Thank you for seeing. I pinned the photo to my refrigerator, right next to Whiskey's vet appointment reminder and a grocery list. A $37 million artifact, living next to mundane everyday life. The juxtaposition felt appropriate, felt true. Whiskey jumped on the counter, looked at the photo, meowed. I picked him up, held him against my chest, felt him purr. This cat, this scrawny orange tabby with a crooked ear, this animal my father wanted to kill, this life I'd fought to save. He'd given me everything. Purpose, courage, wealth, freedom, a life I'd never imagined possible. All because I'd refused to let him die. All because I believed his life had value even when no one else did. Best investment I ever made. Best decision I ever made. Best thing that ever happened to me. Treasure doesn't announce itself. Doesn't come wrapped in gold. Sometimes it's dirty, discarded, labeled as trash by people who can't see what it really is. My treasure was a cat and a bowl, both worthless to my family, both priceless to me. One person's garbage is another person's salvation. Simple as that. Whiskey finished his breakfast, licked his chops, looked up at me with those green eyes, meowed once, loud, demanding. I laughed, scratched his head, told him he was welcome, told him he'd earned every bit of this, told him we were good, we were safe, we were home. He purred, rubbed his face against my hand, then jumped down and walked a window, sat in the sunlight, watched birds in the yard. Content, alive, exactly where he belonged. I stood in my kitchen, in my house, in my life that hadn't existed a year ago, stood in the peace I'd bought with kindness and stubbornness, and refusing to bend when everything told me to break. This was the ending, not perfect, not fairy tale, just real, just enough. Sometimes enough is everything. Sometimes a treasure was the cat we saved along the way, and I wouldn't change a single thing.